Hello, welcome. Joining me today to share the 10 books that had a major impact on her life and work is writer, author, researcher, educator, inventor, and speaker in the fields of the human biofield, therapeutic sound, and electric health, Eileen Day McKusick. A self-confessed stubborn rule breaker and sandboxing innovator, Eileen McKusick has an MA in integrative education and is the originator of the sound therapy method Biofield Tuning and the founder of the Biofield Tuning Institute, which conducts peer-reviewed studies on the human biofield. She's also the author of the best-selling books Tuning the Human Biofield and Electric Body, Electric Health. Eileen McKusick, welcome.
Hi, Sandie. Thanks so much for having me.
So tell us what role books have played in your life and how you found the process of having to distill a lifetimes of reading down to just 10 books.
Well, I've always been a bookworm. I was a nerdy kid and I read a lot as a kid. And I have 5 older siblings. So my reading opportunities were always kind of higher than my grade level. And I was doing like the Lord of the Rings when I was like 9 years old kind of thing, because they were there. And I just really loved reading. I grew up next to a library. And so I was always in the library getting books. And then when I was 18, I became interested in science and spirituality, self-help, that sort of thing. And so I turned my appetite for books from fiction to nonfiction. And honestly, since 1987, I've maybe read 10 fiction books, and that's it. But the rest is really always continuously research of some kind or another. But there were definitely some books that I read, that I read again and again, books that really made an impression on me, books that I mentally reference regularly, right? So those were the ones that I ended up picking, the ones that just came to mind very quickly as being really formative to my inner cosmology.
What was it that actually turned you on to the spiritual arena?
Well, I became bulimic when I was 17. And when I was 18, I tried to stop. And I couldn't. And it was the first time I'd ever experienced myself where my conscious mind wanted one thing and my subconscious mind was doing another. I confessed it to my mother, but she grew up in the aftermath of World War II where they didn't have enough to eat, and she's like, this is a disease of your time and I really can't help you. She did what she could. She sent me to the new family doctor. They got some new health care plan and sent me this guy we didn't even know. And I ended up getting into an argument with him about the nature of reality. And he was claiming that reality was objective. And I said, that's impossible because we can only view it subjectively. So how can we ever define an objective reality? And he got really frustrated with me. He threw up his hands. He's like, there's nothing I can do to help you. And I was like, guess I'm on my own. So yeah, I went looking for answers about why, this split of self that I was experiencing and how to fix myself. And after about 3 years of reading, I figured out a bunch. I figured out that I'd been really programmed into that kind of behavior. I talk about myself being a bothist, and I practice bothism, right? And that's like, you like the fries or the salad with your burger? And I'm like, both. And so as a natural bothist, bulimia was a very natural response to two signs that young women, people get held up to them: consume and be skinny. And so bulimia was a way to do both. And so I recognized that I'd been programmed, and there wasn't really anything wrong with me, that I had just downloaded this programming and responded to it. And I also realized that it was my hand and my mouth. And if I wasn't in control of myself, who or what was? Right? So it was like, nobody's coming to save me. I absolutely have to find my way into my being and take responsibility for my actions, which is something that I've learned to do. But I did stop with the purging. It was hard to stop the binging. I was very much a sugar addict. Honestly, it took from 18 to 44 trying to quit sugar and trying to get a grip on my food and sugar addiction. And it really wasn't until I started receiving Biofield Tuning, this method that I created, when I trained my first group of students in 2010. And what that work really does is it gets into the undigested, hidden emotional issues that are lurking in your subconscious mind. And it helps to bring them to light and move them through. And, these are the proverbial ants in our pants that sort of drive us to open the fridge. You're like,
Mm.
and so working out that subconscious emotional stuff, I had a lot of shame that was unexpressed. I had a lot of anger that I'd always suppressed. And I really had to dredge the emotional bottom of the bucket in order to get free from that subconscious addiction. But, happily I have, and I'm really have a great relationship with food now. And, if I'd never had the disorder, I don't know that I would have ever come up with all the things that I've come up with
Mm.
that have helped me and many other people at this point to just feel more whole.
It's amazing the experiences we have that do turn our light on, and we think that they are negative experiences, but ultimately there's always a silver lining to them.
Absolutely. I mean, I'll never forget. I remember having one moment when I was like hanging my head over the toilet. Bulimia is such a shameful practice. And I said, God, why is this even happening? And I heard a voice very clearly that you are going to help other people who have this problem. And I was like, okay.
Yes, I wish there was another way to help other people. Yeah, so let's start with your books. I don't know if you gave them in any particular order, but we'll just start with the first one on my list, which is Siddhartha by Hermann Hesse, published in 1922. And you said you read this when you were 18.
Yeah. I read that when I was 18, and it was very formative. And that is also a book that has this passage in it that has really stuck with me. And that is the concept. So the book is about Siddhartha, or Buddha, the prince who became who we know as Buddha, and his experience of enlightenment sitting under the Bodhi tree. And while he's hanging out, as he is approaching this expanded bliss state, all of the demons and dark things come up and start trying to get his attention. And he just sits there and he just lets them all go by. And there's something about that whole picture of knowing that when you're getting close to the juicy heart of something, the monsters or whatever interfering vibrations are going to come up, and we can think that they're real and do battle with them and put energy into resisting or fighting or trying to slay, or we can just sit and know that that this is a phase and they're simply going to pass through. And that has been such a useful image for me for my whole life since reading it.
It's amazing what people get out of Siddhartha. I mean, it's one of the books now, after 5 years of, publishing people's 10 best lists and doing these interviews, it is consistently in the top 20 of recommendations. Yeah.
I believe that. It's just it lands, right? It really lands. It's so distilled. It's so perfect. It's so poetic. Every page, every sentence, it just lands. And it is that sort of book that you can go back to and read again and again and continue to get something out of it.
Something out of it, yeah. Book number 2 is quite different. This is Unlimited Power by Tony Robbins, published in 1986.
Mm-hmm. So I first read, I think probably 1987, when that came out. That was among the first books when I was 18, when I started diving into this.
Mm-hmm.
And Tony was a huge influence on me and continues to be. Really one of my first teachers. I was so excited about everything that was in that book. I actually went to see him. So I lived in Connecticut at the time. I went to see him in Lowell Auditorium in Massachusetts when I was 20. And he actually called on me in the audience. He was asking people about their top values. And he picked me and had me stand up and list my values. And I just got hooked. And I was so excited. I raised money from friends and family to go to his first 9-day mastery. When I was 21, I did a 65-foot firewalk all the way back then. And, people do shorter ones, but 65 feet's a long freaking firewalk. And to have that kind of experience when I was 21 really made me be so open to what else is possible. What is the power of our mind? I feel like Tony has laid down really big footprints that millions of people have expanded their idea of what their own potential is because of toning.
Yeah. And certainly walking across 65 feet of burning coals will certainly teach you about mind over matter.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Book number 3. I love your list because it is so diverse. Anatomy of the Spirit, Why People Don't Heal and How They Can by Caroline Myss, published in 2004.
Mm-hmm. So I read that.
Actually, it wasn't published in 2004. It was 1996.
1996. Okay, then that was right in that era, right? So and I read it when it first came out, 1996, 1997. And that book was very formative for me. Because she's such a good writer. It was so timely. What was interesting about that book was I read it. I didn't get into tuning forks until 1996. So and that came out in 96, right? But I read it before. I read it right before I started using the tuning forks. And then I read it years later. I went to college as an adult. And in 2008, in one of the classes that I took, that was required reading. And it was so interesting to me going back to that book after many years of discovering and mapping the biofield anatomy. And what I discovered was that all of the different emotions that Carolyn puts in different energy centers was exactly what I had found, only I had extrapolated it further to the left and right sides. And so there was so much correlation in my own discoveries with what she shares in that book. So it was very reaffirming to me about the objectivity because, like me, she was a practitioner, someone who was working with people. That, her perception came from lots of observation. And that's where mine came from as well. Whereas with the Louise Hay books, I think that Louise channeled a lot of that. It wasn't necessarily born of observation. So where I didn't line up all the time with Louise Hay, I absolutely did with Caroline Myss. And so that was great to revisit it at the time that I did.
She's had a massive impact on people.
Yes.
I wonder if she understands how much,
Right? It was hard to have that all sink in, I think, you never know how many people read your book and how it informs what they do. It's such a ripple effect.
Yes, it is. Number 4, Life Force, The Scientific Basis by Claude Swanson. I think that one was published in 2009. At least, I think there are 2 books in this series and only one of them seems to be available. I could only track the second one down, but I've heard that this is it's a hard read.
This is a serious book, and it came to me at the best time. I started working on my master's thesis called Exploring the Effects of Audible Sound on the Human Body and its Biofield in 2010, and I was tasked with writing a academic treatise on an esoteric subject, which is weird space to straddle in the academic world. And my thesis advisors told me that it had to be above excellent writing on that topic. And Claude Swanson's book, probably of all the books on the list, was really opened my mind to lots of new information that was very powerful and very relevant to my area of study. It's a 750 odd page book, and I read it twice while I was working on my master's thesis. I went through it twice. My version is so highlighted and tabbed and dog-eared. Very, very formative. And I actually had the good fortune of meeting Claude on several occasions and the opportunity to give him a tuning and to talk to him about the theory. I actually differed with him on our biofield theory, and because he held that biophotons are just in the body and not in the field. And I had discovered what I would call biophotons in the field, frozen, trapped memories, soul fragments, what have you, and that they wanted to be in the body. And that biofield tuning is really a practice of returning these biophotons to the body. But he really didn't want to hear my side of things, which I thought was interesting. But, he is also a man with PhDs from MIT. And here I am, this girl waving tuning forks around. And I don't think that he wanted to accept that my theory might be an evolution of his based, again, on hands-on and deep research as well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's an interesting one because, if we have a field, if we have all these bodies in this field, of course there would be biophotons there. And, they can't just be here and trapped here.
Right. I agree. I understood it, why he felt that way in theory, that they shouldn't be out in the field, really, then, not in the concentrations that I find them, and that they do want to be back in the body. So I think he had the point, but he was sort of missing what trauma does to a field, that it brings it out of order. And hypothetically, it should be the way that he was envisioning it. But in reality, it's part of why we're all so messy, is because we do have biophotons trapped in our field. But the beautiful thing is that they can be returned back to the body, back into circulation. And with that is a youthifying kind of effect. It's like turning backwards time.
But, as you're saying that, it makes me think of, shamanic soul retrieval. And, they're using sound, their instruments, the drumming, etc. Have you ever done any, studies or research with shamanic practitioners and using the forks?
Yeah, absolutely. When I first discovered that there was sonic phenomena in the atmosphere around the body, and I started to explore, it dawned on me that I was actually through people's memory banks, that in this particular model, the body is inside the mind. The mind is the biofield, the electromagnetic bubble that surrounds us, and that our memories are stored in standing waves in this field. And that when I comb a tuning fork through the field and I hit areas of resistance or static or noise, that's a very specific memory and an aspect of self. So in shamanism, there's a concept that when you undergo trauma, a bit of the soul breaks off and stays there. And then the shaman will journey back in time, find that, and then return it to here and now, and place or blow it back into the body. And when I realized that these were like soul fragments and that I was literally retrieving them and bringing them back, I called it sonic soul retrieval. And it's very much the same thing. And having worked with Peruvian shamans and other shamans and understanding that system, we're doing the exact same thing. We're finding heavy energy. We're helping the body alchemize it back into light and returning these fragments, defragmenting the biofield, if you will. So it's the exact same thing. It's a return of self to self and a restoration of wholeness.
Yes. Book number 5, Molecules of Emotion, The Science Behind Mind-Body Medicine, Candice Pert, published in 1997.
Mm-hmm. Also a really seminal, groundbreaking book. Sadly, we don't have her with us anymore. But I think that book really, this idea that emotions were things that could get squirreled away inside of us. I know for me, in my childhood, I generated a lot of sadness. And I buried it under chocolate and things like that. And that those pockets of sadness were squirreled away in little hidey holes all throughout my body. When I first started doing yoga back in 1994, it's this sort of thing, if you're in a position like plow with your legs over your belly hanging in your face, those emotional molecules start to release and move. And they bring up waves of sadness or anger or what have you. And I think this is why so many people start doing something like yoga or exercising or running or going to the gym, and then they stop. Because when you start using your body and moving your body in ways that you don't usually, it starts those energies moving, and it's not comfortable. And I spent years doing yoga and going to the gym. I would say it's only in the last year that my body has stopped popping old bubbles of sadness that were squirreled away in me somewhere, in the form of a little vibrating molecule of sadness in that song, right? And I think so many people can relate to that sense.
Yeah.
So that was a very eye-opening, mind-expanding, and shed a lot of light on my work and finding these trapped emotions in the field and the body. It's a thing.
Yeah.
It's a wave, but it also generates a chemical component because we're both.
Absolutely. Book number 6, The Biology of Belief, Unleashing the Power of Consciousness, Matter and Miracles, Bruce Lipton, highly popular book, published in 2005.
Yeah. Yep. Another one that really those books where that dots connect and all of a sudden you have to put down the book and like look out the window for a long
Yeah.
time. Who knows, your mind does this. I've got so much out of his book as well. I've had the good fortune of meeting Bruce several times presenting at similar events. He has my books now, which is really great, and a sonic slider. I think one of the sentences from that was so impactful was coming across this idea that our cells had little antennas, microtubular antennas on them that vibrated like tuning forks, and that they transmitted and received information. Because, we learn about cells and nobody ever tells you that they have antennas on them. It doesn't even occur to you. And then this idea, again, made so much sense with what I was observing with my tuning forks, that the body was either transmitting chaos or it was transmitting order. And I could hear it. And that the tuning forks helped the body through this reception and these little antennas to become more harmonious, to start singing a more groovy song. And that just made so much sense to me. Just like the emotion piece, right? It just, these little bits helped me form a bigger picture of what was going on in what I was encountering in the field that didn't make any sense. And so in order to create a framework, I needed all these different inputs that all kind of come together in a gestalt synthesis of the hypothesis that I work with.
Yeah. It all comes down to frequency, doesn't it? Frequency, energy. That's it.
Yeah.
That's all of it.
That's all of it. It's really like vibration in a fluid medium.
Yes.
Right, is really what we have going on here. It's a resonant electric universe. And we've been so put under the spell of materialism that it's hard to make that lens shift into realizing, wow, it's all electric, it's all vibrational, it's all fields of energy and information. And that even though it seems solid, that's just an artifact of my human perception.
Book number 7, I've not heard of this one before, The Electric Sky by Donald Scott. And you say that this was the self-help book that ended your need for self-help books, even though it's not a self-help book.
Not a self-help.
So explain that.
John Scott would be so horrified that anyone would call his book a self-help book because he's such a hard scientist. Well, I think that, from 18 on, right, I would say that I had been a seeker. And I think so many of us are, right? We're seeking. Well, what the heck are we seeking, right? And just this feeling like something is missing, like I'm not getting it. And even though I spent decades spending a lot of money and time and energy on self-help, in 2009, I was not fit. I was not rich. I was not healthy. I was fighting with my husband all the time. Like, none of the things that I had been pursuing were working for me. It wasn't working. And I had this kind of chronic background, low-level angst that I just didn't even understand. That was the itch I was trying to scratch. And then one night, in the end of 2009, my 12-year-old son came to the dinner table and he said, "Did you know there's a fourth state of matter called plasma?" And I was like, liquid gas. No, somehow I missed a whole state of matter, right? Didn't learn about it. And so that set me on this journey of discovering plasma and discovering that there's actually 2 more states of matter that are hidden from us. The illuminated, connected states of matter of plasma and ether that we're not taught about in order to keep us in the mechanistic materialist mindset. And I realized that plasma, what is plasma? Well, it's our atmosphere is plasma. You go to the beach and we talk about free ions, or you get an ionizer, for your home. What is it doing? It's a plasma generator. It is electric charge. Why do we go to the beach? To recharge, or to the woods to recharge? Because there's more plasma. The sun is a plasma. The stars are a plasma. Lightning is a plasma. Like, there's light all around us and in it. And our electrical system that we're never taught about is a plasma. It's light. It is your light body. And I realized that my spiritual light body was also biological. And that I had an electrical system, that I had electric current flowing through me, that I had a magnetic field around me. And I was like, oh my God, this is the light I've been seeking. It's a state of matter that bridges this whole idea of science and spirituality, that I am both. My electrical system is both my soul, my consciousness that it's light, it can't die. The light within is the same as the light without, and it's all connected. Right? It was this huge aha for me. And The Electric Sky is a plasma cosmology book that just really like explains what plasma is. And I was like, this is the light that I've been seeking. Here it is. And so I don't need to look anymore because I found the light. And I realized that through this light, I was connected to like the whole cosmos. I could feel the songs of the stars like resonating in my light body. I just didn't need to look for anything after that because I found it.
How did that change? I mean, you said that, you weren't rich, you were arguing with your husband, you weren't doing many of the things that you thought you would do. Did those things suddenly start appearing in your life because you changed your attitude?
I changed my cosmological story. I changed my cosmological story from the dark, separate, entropy, it's all going down, it's pointless, blah, blah, to like it's all light, it's all connected, it's all one. There's syntropy going on. It's not just entropy and gravity, there's syntropy, which is coming together and being creative. There's levity, sound waves fall upwards, right? So not only did I bring in 2 more states of matter, I brought in 2 more forces of nature as well. And so all of a sudden I had way more to work with in order to solve my problems. Plus, in 2010, I trained my first students and I started receiving tuning and I started to get my own field in order. And as I deepened my understanding of the concept of electric health, which is really what I teach, it's like stop looking at your health and your life through this chemical and mechanical lens and taking supplements and this, that, and the other. Like I don't take any supplements. I just breathe really well because I get that most of the electric juice that I run on is coming from the air. And so my health pursuits are all about making my breath bigger, freer, fuller, deeper, more satisfying because that is what feeds my light body the most is the charged atmosphere. Why does your blood turn bright red? Because it's full of light, right? We can only go a few minutes without breath. So you can take supplements all day long, but if you're holding your breath or you're breathing shallowly, you're going to still run out of energy in the, 3 in the afternoon. So it's a much easier lens. It's a much easier framework to get healthy in because so much of what you need for electric health is free. Laughter, hugs, sunlight, eating food that is living and full of that light and life force.
Yeah.
Right? It's so much easier. And tuning helps to literally, like everybody always says when they receive tuning, that they feel lighter. Because we're all carrying around all these soul chunks that are frozen in your biosphere are heavy. They're heavy energy. And when you comb them back into circulation, everybody says the same thing. I feel lighter. We just put light back into the system and you literally feel lighter. So that is what happened to me from like 2010 on, was that I started to transmute all of these heavy things and started to really understand basically what it is. Sandie, it's like rewiring your pain body back into your light body. Right. And I think so many people are looking for like that instant thing where, you're going to go from like, to like, in a weekend or something. It doesn't, in my experience, and I'm shortcut Shirley, like I'll look for the easiest way to do anything. Your wiring needs to be put together in such a way that you can sustain having that degree of current and expansion in you. And if we've been wired, those of us who are traumatized a lot, just wired for pain and heaviness and stuckness. You got all those molecules of emotion stuck in you. Got all your little antennas are shut down because they couldn't stay open in the environment you were in. So you can't receive and be abundant. There's been such a process for me of unpeeling the sticky innie and rewiring the pain, getting it all. And as that's happened, I become more and more and more free. My husband and I don't fight anymore. My sons and I haven't fought in years, knock on wood. I got rid of all the debt and poverty consciousness and all of that. But over time.
Yeah, that makes absolute sense. Yeah. Raise your vibration, change your life.
Yeah. Totally.
And talking of that, well, let's talk about voltage. That is, Healing is Voltage, the handbook by Jerry Tennant, which was published in 2010.
Yeah, that was perfect timing for me too, working on my thesis. So Jerry's wonderful. He's such a pioneer too, with this understanding of the body as electrical. It's not just a byproduct of chemistry like the mechanists want to tell us. And one of the key things that I came across in Jerry's book that really clicked things in for me was this idea that when we talk about pH, we're really talking about voltage. And so when people have low pH, and then that is a disease-prone state, that's the same as having low voltage or low electrical charge or a low battery. And for me, that was like a keystone in switching the language from chemical speak to electric speak. When a system has too much resistance in the current, then the voltage drops. And when people have low voltage and high entropy, high levels of disorder, that's when they end up with things like long haul anything, because the body can't jumpstart itself back into sufficient order and sufficient voltage to then run properly. And so this idea that healing is voltage and that we want to raise our voltage in order to be healthy, right? And so I always ask people, like, on a scale of 1 to 100, what is your inner battery meter at, like right now? Got a number, Sandie?
Well, the first thing that came into my head was 50, and then I thought, is that true? Personally, I think it's higher than that.
Mm-hmm.
It's not 100 by any means, but I would have said closer to 70.
Okay. Yeah. So this is an interesting thing to think about, because imagine you have a business with 100 employees and only 70 of them are coming to work every day, right? Is everything getting done? No. What if only 50 are coming, or 40, right? That thing starts to really fall apart. And I think that our self-worth plays a really huge role in what we're comfortable having as a baseline for our overall voltage, right? Why not 90? Why not 95?
Yeah.
What's stopping us from figuring out how to manage our energies so that we can be at that level of our potential? Because we all know that we have way more potential than most of us are actually realizing. And I think this is so much of what drives self-help, is that people know that there's more to them than they're able to express, and they're driven to express themselves, to reach their potential. But the trouble is that many people are stuck in this place where their batteries are 40, 50, 60. And you know, with your phone, when it gets to 40, it drops fast from there, right? So there's like there's over there of descent. So I think it's really useful to think about things in terms of, is this going to charge me up, or is this going to drain me out? And why am I always saying yes to things that drain me out? Right? and can I say yes to the things that are like, that's going to charge me and that's going to lift me up? But I think out of guilt, duty, obligation, a sense of accommodation, being a peacekeeper, being a healer, being a mother, whatever, so many of us are like, and then the meter just drops. And maybe it's like way too audacious to step into and own a 90 plus battery meter.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Would you say that, I know that he has the biomodulator, which you can use on your body for pain and all kinds of things, even on your chakras, apparently. I had a biomodulator and it really helped me after a rather bad accident. But would you say that what the biomodulator is doing to the cells, the tuning forks do?
Yeah. I mean, I think it's the same thing. What the tuning forks do is they help add energy and order to the body. That's it. It's a signal, right? It's a vibrating signal. It's vibration, it's energy, and it's a coherent signal. And so when you put that in the proximity of the body, it's giving the body energy and coherence. And so the body becomes more energized and more coherent. It's very simple. The whole idea is your body knows how to fix itself. It just very often needs to be jump-started in order to get up out of that place into a place where now it's going to self-regulate better. Right? And so you can do that with $30,000 machines. You can do it with Jerry's biomodulator, or you can do it with an $85 tuning fork if you know how to use it, right? And I'm a low-tech gal. I really, over the years, lots of people create devices or things and they reach out to me and they're like, oh, you're about vibration. Like, here's this device. And I've tried all kinds of different devices, but at the end of the day, man-made electromagnetic fields are something that we're really already overexposed to. Like, I've tried different beauty devices because I make the sonic slider, which you can use. And I've tried microcurrent, red light. And after just a few days of using them, I feel too over electrified. Like, it's bad enough I got my phone and my laptop and I start throwing other electric devices into the mix and it just gets too much. So I stick to analog when it comes to healing. I want to believe in, like, what's the least amount of effort, the lowest amount of tech you can get the biggest results from. And you don't need to recharge it or this or that. You know what I mean? So it's less expensive, it's easier to use, and you can get a really similar, if not the same outcome, depending on how you learn how to use it. Yeah. I mean, gadgets are great. Don't get me wrong. And I think the biomodulator absolutely has its place. And there are certain people it works great for. But, not me.
Well, one of the beauties of the tuning forks is they can't wear out. Nothing could go wrong.
Well, actually, they can. They really, truly can. I mean, I'd like to think that they don't. Most don't. But some people have bad striking habits, or things can get dropped or whatever. And every once in a while, a tuning fork will wear out. So
how would one know if it?
Well, with the weighted forks, sometimes it just won't vibrate for as long. And with the unweighted ones, they just sort of develop a buzz that is not, it's uncomfortable. Like, you'd start a fork that you used to like and we're using, all of a sudden it's got this weird buzz. It makes me think of like when mold starts on an orange, you're like, oh, that's not right. Just like gets this little that isn't. And that can happen after working in somebody's field where things are particularly stuck. What happens is you end up with micro cracks in the metal. Just like guitar strings wear out with use, right, through metal fatigue. Tuning forks with a lot of heavy use in a lot of heavy fields can start to develop those micro cracks. So they're not immune to it.
Can they be recalibrated, repaired? No?
I don't think so, because once you end up with the micro cracks in the deep structure, people are like, what if I put them out in the moonlight? I was like, yeah, I don't think that's going to do it.
I'll bear that in mind next time I'm working with mine,
Yeah, you have to use them really hard in order for that to be a problem. So I wouldn't worry. Just don't strike them harder than you need to either.
So moving on, the last two books are completely different. Number 9 is The Chronicles of Narnia by C.S. Lewis, published in 1956. One of my favourites growing up. What was it about these books?
Oh gosh, I must have read them all like 30 or 40 times. I mean, I read them over and over and over again. I love the idea of Aslan as the lion, as God. Just that has always been so, just the way that I perceive that energy, to the lion aspect. I don't know. I have a Leo moon, so that might have something to do with it. But the stories, they're just such great stories. The characters, everything about those books was so eminently readable and so satisfying. They're such satisfying little adventures to go on. And the whole idea of the last battle, right? That, I think, kind of made a spiritual impression on me in the same way that Dartha did. It feels very relevant. Yeah. And there's one scene in the last battle where they go through the doorway into the stable. They're thrown into the stable, but they realize that they've gone to the new earth, if you will. And there's a bunch of dwarfs that are in the stable and they think they're in the stable. They don't see that they're not, right? And that there's just something about that, about how our own perception shapes our experience of the world.
Yeah.
Right? So that, I think I read The Last Battle the most, honestly, out of all of them. And I feel like, Tolkien or C.S. Lewis is such a master of metaphor and the subconscious seeding that
Yes.
in all of that.
Yes. Yes. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, love a good parable.
Yeah.
So book number 10, Alice's Adventures in Wonderland, Lewis Carroll, published in 1865.
Wow, 1865. I didn't know that.
Yeah.
I mean, there's something right about the timeless endurance of that story. No, I just love the whimsicality of it, the somewhat psychedelic eat me, drink me. I think that really has an appeal for the shamanic mind. Maybe I didn't recognize that as a child, but that entering into different states of reality and having
Yes.
different experiences. And I think that there's a psychedelic shamanic aspect to Alice in Wonderland that just really resonated with me.
Yeah, one has to wonder, how did that story get into his mind? Yeah. Yeah. Wow. Well, that's your 10 best list. So let's talk a bit more about you now. Sandboxing innovator. Tell me about that.
Well, I think so many people that I know, I think there's a certain personality type, but I think it tends to fall in the majority. They become paralyzed by perfection and afraid to do the wrong thing. And as a consequence, never really branch out into their own creative potential because they're afraid of being messy or they're afraid of doing something wrong. I'm not afraid to get messy. I am not afraid to do things wrong. I will jump in with both feet. I'm a fool's rush in where angels fear to tread gal all the time. And that has really allowed me to create so many different things. Biofield Tuning, the Biofield Tuning Anatomy, my school, my institute, the tuning forks that I've created so many prototypes and used them and then found ones that are particularly useful and then brought those to other people. I'm endlessly curious and endlessly creative, and I'm not afraid to spend time and energy figuring something out and then decide I don't want anything to do with it. And I just keep on going forward, following whatever my curiosity is. I started my first business when I was 20. I started another business after that and another business after that. I don't think about things. I just jump right
You just
in
do it.
and do it. And that has allowed me to do a lot and do a lot. And yeah, it's been messy. I don't care. Even like with my first book, Tuning the Human Biofield, like my first draft of that was horrible. It sucked. But you know what? I did it. And I got out that first draft. And then I was able to go back and massage it and massage it and massage it until it finally became good. Right? So I think a lot of people try to edit themselves too much, or they judge themselves too much, or and then they don't do. I think a willingness to be gleefully messy in the creative process is absolutely necessary.
Yeah, I agree with you. Your institute, you conduct a lot of research. You've worked with ions. What is the latest research on sound that you can share with us?
Well, last year we enrolled 100 volunteers in a study to see how biofield tuning would affect people with clinical anxiety. And of that 100, 65 people each received 5 one-hour Zoom biofield tuning sessions with one of our practitioners. And then we had 35 people who were in a control group, and they watched a video each week about emotional regulation and also answered the same questionnaires for the people who received tuning. So this was a follow-up to a previous feasibility study we had conducted in 2020 and had published in 2023, where we had 15 volunteers who received 3 sessions. And the outcome of that little study was so profound. Like all of the graphs that show like anxiety markers went over the course of the 3. Every single person came out without clinical anxiety. And that enabled us to raise about $300,000 to do this next study. So we are currently in the process of evaluating all of that data. It's a lot of data to manage, but we'll be writing up that paper from that study this summer and submitting that for peer review. And that's a much more powerful study. I'm so curious to know the outcomes, because if they're anything like the first one, it's super compelling. It's like, hey, let's take a look at this because this is for real. And let's start choosing to understand the biofield instead of just dismissing it like it doesn't exist. Like, to me, this is throwing down a bit of a gauntlet and being like, this is Biofield remote healing, because it's both biofield healing and remote healing. So it forces us to look at both. And honestly, I never thought that this work could be done at a distance. I always said that it couldn't until I finally tried it. And when the very first time, I had a client pretend that he was on my table in Vermont when he was actually lying down on a table in California. And his biofield showed up, and all of his biofield information was there. And I was able to read it and adjust it. And then when we got on the phone afterwards and I shared my notes about my observations about his life, basically, in his body. And I can get extremely detailed information about people's fields. Like, really, your life becomes an open book or an album, and I'm just able to really read the whole thing in some vibrational language that I really come to understand. Anyway, it worked. And then I was like, okay, well, if it works from Vermont to California, let me see if it works from Vermont to Australia. I had a friend in Australia, another author by the name of Brandon Murphy, and he was the second person I tried it on. No open communication. Sure enough, there's his field. I'm able to read it and adjust it. I'm completely right in what I read, and both of them felt the result of being adjusted. So I was like, okay, well, if this is possible, then there has to be a law of nature that makes it so. So let's not dismiss it and say it's impossible. It's happening. Let's understand it instead. And that's where the additional cosmology, when you put the ether, the unifying background field, some people might call it the quantum whatever. I don't use the word quantum. It's just resonance in the ether. It's all one thing. It's like not even that hard to understand. And you can explain it to a 3-year-old. It's just this willful denial of the connectivity of life because it's profitable to keep humans in the dark.
There's been a lot of interest in the last decade or so on sound and frequency and how it can be used in medicine. I mean, some of the innovations, the lasers that they're using for brain surgery, all based on light. And even now, in business, in commerce, they're using sound. There's all kinds of equipment that can analyze people's voices when they, make a call to a call center that gives the person at the call center some kind of reading of, what kind of person is this and what kind of mood are they in so that they know how to address them. I mean, this is astonishing. And some of it could be manipulative. But I think, on the plus side, this is a whole new area that we're moving into that could revolutionize medicine and healing.
It already is. It definitely already is, and it will continue. But I remember when I was first doing research for my thesis in 2010, I was really hard-pressed to find studies on sound. I mean, there was hardly anything. And then I realized that all of the studies on sound and frequency were like DARPA studies. They were about how to create sound weapons and things like that, how to manipulate people's thinking, understanding emotional frequencies, mental frequencies. So all of this research on sound has been conducted, but it's been conducted in secret for nefarious purposes. But at the same time, there's been a lot of people like me, like John Beaulieu, Jonathan Goldman, Geraldine Glass, people who are figuring out how to use frequencies for good to help create coherence in humans instead of the opposite. So we kind of have a frequency war of like bad vibes versus good vibes going on. And, ultimately, evil consumes itself. And what is true is sustainable. Harmony is the nature of the cosmos. It's the nature of our factory settings. We're designed to be in harmony with the cosmos and our environment. So ultimately, I know we will return to that because it's just the ground state of what we are. But there certainly is a lot of noise in the signal at the moment.
How do you research and find out, when you're creating maybe a new tuning fork with a new frequency, where do you start? I mean, do you just get an idea that, wouldn't it be great to have something that could do this? And then you go and do the research till you find it?
Yeah. So the very first tuning fork that I created was the Schumann resonance, the average of the Schumann resonance, 7.83 times 8. And I honestly am not really sure why I picked that, but I did. And right off the bat, that very first prototype, at the time I was using a weighted 128 fork, and I had been for a number of years, maybe almost like 10 years. been using a 128. But then as soon as I used this 62.64, I was like, whoa, this is like a completely different animal. 128 would only vibrate like where I put it. But the Schumann-based fork, like, it was very clear that it like went into the body finding where it needed to go. It had an intelligence to it that was sort of alarming to me at first. It was very evident. And then the next one I created was 7.83 times 7, 54.81. So I could create a binaural beat with the two forks. If you listen to one in one ear and one in the other, it creates 7.83 in the brain. So I created that. And then the other frequencies then I created a Fibonacci pair, the 11th and 12th positions in the Fibonacci sequence, 89 and 144. I did create a whole bunch of forks based in different numbers and sacred geometry, and I played with those for a while, but none of those really stuck. The Fibonacci forks, I created them, played with them for a while, stuck them in a bag and forgot about them, dragged them out maybe a year and a half, 2 years later, and was using them. And I was like, oh my God. I was like, these are super cool. And then I use them more. Same thing with the 222 hertz fork that I sell. I had created that prototype maybe 4 years ago. I played with it for a bit and then forgot about it. That's one of the things with being an inventor is that I'm constantly like coming up with things. Very little of what I actually make and play with has made it into. We only sell 10 forks. We have 5 weighted forks and 5 unweighted forks. And
what's the difference between the two?
I don't have any next to me. Weighted forks are really designed to use on the body. So when you activate a fork, they got little barrels on the end, like a doctor might use to test for neuropathy. And what the barrels do is they send the vibration into the body. So you don't hear them. So I use those mostly on the body, but you can use them in the field too. And you can feel if you pass a vibrating fork, whether it's weighted or unweighted, slowly through the field and pay attention to your fingertips, you can feel when you hit an area of turbulence. Everybody can. You don't have to be sensitive. You don't have to be psychic. You don't have to be intuitive. It's pure senses. The body is producing a field, and it is a field of different gradients and expressions. And when you move vibration through it, it interacts with the vibration that's present. And if there's an area where there's a heavy disturbance, the fork, you can even see the fork vibrating different in there. Right? I mean, just like, let's just get over the blah about the biofield. It freaking exists. You're giving off vibes. Everybody's caught a bad or a good vibe off of somebody. Everything in the body is in motion. Everything in motion makes waves, and waves propagate. And so the tuning forks allow us to interact with the waves propagating off the body. So with a weighted fork, you can really feel it. But with an unweighted fork, just a standard tuning fork, the tone actually changes in different memories. So if I'm in a memory of where you got T-boned unexpectedly in a car accident, the tuning fork is going to make the alarm sound, which means it's going to be like, right? And I'm going to hear it, and you're going to hear it. You're going to be like, what's that? And I'm like, oh, it's age 18. And they were like, oh, that's why I had that car accident. Sounds like a car accident to me. Fear has like a pulsing kind of quality, kind of like the Jaws soundtrack. So if somebody's really afraid and you're sticking a fork near them, you're going to hear the beat pulse of that fear in the overtone. It's really simple, and it's just based in basic physics, right? There's nothing esoteric about it.
What are you working on next?
Well, currently I am working on my third book, a book called The Stabilizing Statements, and I'm actually starting a live class, virtual class on that. So this is my third system and map. Biofield Tuning has Biofield Anatomy Map. My work with Isaac and Torl Corin in Sing the Body Electric has a sonic anatomy map where we identified 42 different sounds that resonate in specific areas of the body. Leading that work, we do this toning work that is so inwardly liberating. And the stabilizing statements is a body of work and a map. The easiest one, because you don't need tuning forks and you don't need to tone, is just speaking these statements that rewire us to stay more upright, to stay in the upright version of ourselves. And such a useful system. I also have a secret book that I'm working on.
Not so secret now.
On the side, I'm working on that. Hopefully I'll get that done this year. Released my first album with the Brothers Corin last year, which is all toning for the most part. And so we're in May going to create the content for another album. Yeah, never the sort of music I thought that I would make. That, you know, us being like goo, ga, gee, it's all baby sounds. They're all baby sounds, but when you tone them, they really resonate the body. They energize the body from the inside out. And it's no accident that babies all over the world get started with speech with these very basic sounds as they explore their inner resonant chambers. And so it's really bringing you back to the innocence and wholeness of when you were making those sounds naturally. Because singing divides people and makes them judge themselves. So it's really hard to judge yourself when you're just making the sound wah. Do you know? So it's sort of I would say all my work is about helping you to be whole, to be present, to be grounded, to be regulated, so that you can enjoy the little things in your life. But that's really what it comes down to. Excuse me. Because your life is really just a collection of all these little moments. Did you make your morning coffee perfectly? Did you enjoy it? Did you put just the right amount of jam on your toast?
One last question. Steve Jobs famously gave to the attendees at his memorial service a copy of Paramahansa Yogananda's Autobiography of a Yogi. What book would you give to the people who attend your memorial service?
Wow, that's such an interesting question, isn't it? I don't know, Sandie. I think I have to think about that. I mean, that's a really big decision. It's hard to just come right off the top of your head on something like that.
If you had to choose one out of the 10 that we've discussed today, which one of those?
Siddhartha is the first one that came to mind. Siddhartha is the first one that came to mind. And I think because if nobody's read it, right, there's a reason why all of us who've read it have it on this list, because it is an impactful book. And it lands, and the seed takes root from that book. So of the list, that is the one that I would pick. But I want to think about that, because it might be fun to have a truly secret book that doesn't come out until then from me.
Okay, well, let me know if you come up with something. Let me know.
I will.
We'll add it to your page. Eileen McKusick, thank you so much for adding your 10 best list of spiritual books to the No BS Spiritual Book Club's library.
Yeah, you bet. Thanks for, Sandie, I really enjoyed this exercise. I really did. It was fun to think about. It was fun to summarize it, and it's been great to discuss them with you. So thank you for inviting me to have this opportunity with you.
It's our pleasure. For more information on Eileen McKusick's work, research, products, trainings, and her books, Tuning the Human Biofield and Electric Body, Electric Health, visit her websites, 2 of them at biofieldtuning.com and electrichealth.com. And to read Eileen's 10 best list on the website, click on the link in the description below this video. It will take you straight to her dedicated page. This show is also available as a podcast on all the major podcast platforms, including Spotify, iTunes, and iHeartRadio. That's it for this week. I'll be back at the same time next week with another 10 best interview for the No BS Spiritual Book Club. Till then, it's goodbye from me, and thank you again, Eileen McKusick.